All right, let's dive into a massive idea from the book Why Nations Fail. It's a book that tries to answer one of the biggest, most fundamental questions out there.
I mean, really think about it. Why are some countries just incredibly prosperous, while others seem completely stuck in a cycle of poverty? We're not talking about geography or culture or how smart people are. The book argues that the real answer, the core reason, is something else entirely.
And believe it or not, the clue to this giant global puzzle, well, you can see it playing out on a single street, in a city split in two by a simple fence. So, meet Nogales. Half of it is in Arizona, USA. The other half is in Sonora, Mexico. The people on both sides, they share the same culture, the same climate, the same food, the same heritage, but their lives are worlds apart. On the Arizona side, the average income is a whopping 3 times higher. People are healthier, live longer, are better educated, and live under a stable democracy. The only thing separating them is that border fence.
Okay, so if it's not the people and it's not the place, what is it? It's the institutions. It's all about the man-made political and economic rules they live under. You can just think of them as the rules of the game. And it turns out there are 2 fundamentally different kinds of games being played.
First up, you have what the book calls extractive institutions. These are basically set up by a small, powerful elite for one reason and one reason only: to extract wealth and resources from everybody else and funnel it straight to the top. Power is completely concentrated in their hands, and there are absolutely no checks and balances to stop them.
And on the flip side, you have inclusive institutions. They're the exact opposite. They're designed to spread power broadly across society. They're all about the rule of law, making sure everyone gets a fair shot. They create a level playing field so that anybody with a good idea and a willingness to work has an opportunity to succeed.
So, let's break that down. What does this actually look like in real life? Well, in an inclusive system, you know your property is safe. The law is supposed to be fair to everyone, and you're free to go out and start a business. But in an extractive system, forget it. Your property could be taken at any time. The legal system is totally biased toward the rich and powerful, and trying to start a business is a nightmare of corruption and barriers designed to keep you out.
Now, you might be wondering, how did countries end up on such different paths? Well, these tracks were laid down centuries ago. And if you want to see how it all started, colonialism is a perfect place to look.
Let's start with the Spanish when they came to the Americas. Their strategy was brutally simple: find gold and silver and exploit the huge settled native populations to do all the work. They perfected this model with a system called the encomienda. Now, this is a crucial detail. It wasn't a grant of land, it was a grant of people. A Spanish conquistador was literally given control over entire indigenous communities, forcing them to work in mines and on plantations. This became the blueprint for extractive institutions across Latin America, creating a terrible legacy of inequality that we can still see today.
Okay, now contrast that with the English in North America. Here's the wild part. Their initial plan was exactly the same: dominate the locals, find gold, get rich. But there was one huge problem. It completely failed. See, the English colonists at Jamestown couldn't find any gold, and the local Native American populations were not large or centralized enough to be easily enslaved. The whole colony was on the brink of collapse. So pretty much out of pure desperation, they had to change the rules of the game. In 1618, they introduced the headright system, giving land to settlers to actually give them an incentive to work hard. A year later, they created a General Assembly, giving men a voice in making their own laws. And just like that, almost by accident, the foundations for inclusive institutions were born in America.
If you want to see the most dramatic, long-term impact of these 2 paths, you just have to look at the Korean Peninsula. Remember, before 1953, it was a single, homogeneous nation. After the war, the North went down the path of brutally extractive communism, while the South, with a lot of U.S. support, developed inclusive ones. The results? They are literally night and day. A satellite photo shows South Korea blazing with light, a global tech powerhouse. North Korea is a failed state shrouded in almost complete darkness.
So why are these paths so incredibly hard to change? Once a country starts down one road, why is it so sticky? The book calls it the power of vicious and virtuous circles.
Extractive institutions create a vicious circle. The elite at the top gets so unbelievably rich and powerful that they can use the state's resources, the police, the army, the courts, to crush anyone who challenges them. For example, in post-colonial Sierra Leone, the new rulers didn't dismantle the British system of extraction. They just took it over and made it even more brutal, enriching themselves while the country completely collapsed.
Inclusive institutions, on the other hand, create a virtuous circle. Because power is distributed widely, it's really difficult for a single leader or group to just take over. When President Franklin Roosevelt tried to pack the Supreme Court in the 1930s to push through his New Deal, even members of his own party in Congress stopped him. They understood that undermining the rule of law would threaten the very system that gave them their power.
So let's bring this all the way into the present. This difference between institutions doesn't just explain the fate of nations, it also explains the fortunes of individuals.
Let's compare two billionaires, Bill Gates and Carlos Slim. Gates became wealthy in an inclusive system by creating innovative products with Microsoft. He could do that because he got a good education, the system protected his property rights, and he was free to compete. But he was also constrained by that system. He had to face a massive antitrust lawsuit from the government. Carlos Slim, on the other hand, got rich in Mexico's more extractive system by using his political connections to get a monopoly on the state-owned telephone company, which he then used to block all competitors. Both are brilliant men, but the system they operated in determined how they became rich.
And that really gets to the core message of the whole book. As the authors say, individual talent matters, but even that needs an institutional framework to transform it into a positive force. See, prosperity doesn't just come from a few geniuses. It comes from a system that allows millions and millions of people to use their talents.
So ultimately, the big takeaway is this. Poverty isn't inevitable. It's not destiny. It's caused by man-made institutions. And because they're man-made, they can be changed. These institutions are the results of choices. And that leaves all of us with a final, massive question. As citizens, what choices will we make to protect and build the inclusive institutions that are the true source of a nation's prosperity?